To where are they holding the Chancellor? No text. It's broken. Can you understand what he's saying?
I'm not a protocol droid.
I'm pretty sure that beep is down.
I sense Count Dooku is above us.
Oh, yes, you're right. Beep is up. I think. Anyway, I agree. Up it is.
Welcome to the Wampa's Lair podcast. Deep in the bowels of the frozen ice caverns of Hoth, our hosts, Carl Leclerc and Jason Hunt, discuss all things Star Wars. So join the conversation and hang out here in the Wampa's Lair.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Wampa's Lair podcast. This might be the most exciting episode we've ever had. It's episode 300, Blue Milk Boys. I'm, as always, one of your hosts, Jason Hunt, and with me, the Han Solo and Kira to my Dryden Voss, we have Carl Leclerc and Katie Horn.
Hi there. Oh, wait, you made yourself Dryden instead of like Chewie or Lando.
I'm a fan of Dryden Voss.
Yeah, Jason does, like, his face changes colors when he gets upset.
I am that pasty white that any sort of emotion flushes me. So, just saying. And I've got a claw on my thumb. So, we're like soulmates already.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Jason, 300 episodes.
Right? I feel like I should be like kicking somebody into a pit saying, "This is Sparta!" or "This is the Wampa's Lair!" or something.
Yeah, I mean, you already like punching people in the face, as we learned in another episode. It's like a punch in the face.
Like a punch in the face.
In the best way. The best kind of punch.
Best way possible. That's what A New Hope is at the beginning, and our podcast. Of course, best kind of punch in the face. I'm never going to live that one down.
Well, I don't want to do too much of the patting ourselves on the back, but we got to pat ourselves a little bit on the back. 300 episodes, like, that's a feat.
It's an accomplishment, and I'm really excited about this. I cannot actually believe that this is a real thing. It's like, I never expected us to stop the podcast, but like episode 300 was never something that crossed my mind when we started this thing, Carl.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, I remember when we hit like episode 15, I was like, wow, that's so many shows.
Oh, wow, 15.
Yeah.
But
dang.
we're so consistent.
That was
I've been doing this forever.
No, like, gosh, I'm old. I'm a veteran.
Right. I mean, we hadn't
fought
even
the podcast wars?
We hadn't even like officially hit year one when the Disney announcement was made. Like, we were like still a month out from our 1 year anniversary, and so that was a big deal. And so, like, wow.
When was the Disney announcement? 2011?
2012.
2012. Okay, so we'd been doing the show for about a year at that point.
Yeah, just almost a year. So it was
right.
like end of August 2012. So
yeah, and that certainly has changed the dynamic, Nothing drives me more crazy than when people are like, how do you have that much to talk about? And I'm like, listen, there's plenty. They're like, oh, well, I guess, with all the new movies. I'm like, we don't need the new movies. Like, we could have hit 300 without Disney. And that's not to belittle Disney. I mean, it's great having new stuff to talk about. But
I mean, it certainly keeps it fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
But
Katie.
before we hop into the episode into the episode proper, we've got to give a shout out to our official sponsor of this episode, this 300th episode of the Wampa's Lair. Over on Patreon. We got to give a big shout out to Daniel, who goes by Jabba. I love it. He's like Ezra. When he first pledged, his name was just Jabba, and I addressed him as such. And then he replied to one of the messages. He's like, "Well, my name's Daniel." I was like, "Okay, Daniel Jabba." So, Daniel, thank you for your support of the show, and we are so glad that you have joined our Patreon family.
Yes. Thank you, Daniel or Jabba or whichever you are, whatever you want to be called. I'm going to go with it, and thank you for saving a wounded Wampa. We really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Wampa bandages don't come cheap, you guys.
No. I need a lot of them when you lose an arm.
Well, So you might be asking yourself, what's with this weird episode 300 title of Blue Milk Boys? Well, I'm glad you asked, Larians. When Jason and I decided to do a podcast together nearly 7 years ago, we were like, oh, what do we want to call it? And I don't remember that many names being batted around, but the final couple was Wampa's Lair and Blue Milk Boys. And I just want to play you guys the little intro Jason recorded for us back then for Blue Milk Boys, because it's pretty damn dynamite. So let me just
we added some music to it
for you.
But yeah.
So here you go. Here's the intro to the Blue Milk Boys podcast.
Welcome to the Blue Milk Boys podcast. Join us as we discuss all things Star Wars over an ice-cold glass of blue milk. From Akbar to Zuckuss, no topic is off limits. And now, the Blue Milk Boys themselves, Carl LeClaire and Jason Hunt.
And there you go, folks. The podcast that almost was.
I think the Blue Milk Boys would have died out at like 60 episodes.
I think you're probably right.
The Wampa's Lair can survive. Blue Milk Boys, no, they'd have been in trouble.
They would not have survived the winter. They were weak.
That's true. The Wampa's Lair has become hardy and very capable of surviving all manner of adversity. I mean, we got freezing cold temperatures, rampaging Wampas, the odd stampede of Tauntauns,
You just, you sign on to do another episode of Blue Milk Boys, and you're just like, I don't want to be a Blue Milk Boy anymore. I'm tired of having this blue milk mustache. It's not happening.
Everybody's like, what are you guys, just a Smurfs podcast? It's like, no, we're not.
No. But yeah, so I'm very glad we went with the Wampa's Lair. But yeah, I think we threw around like 4 or 5 names, but it came down to those two, and it was like. But when we recorded the intros, the decision was obvious. Obviously, Blue Milk Boys. So no, I'm kidding. But yeah,
I just wanted to call us the Force Cast because I figured it'd help us get more listeners right off the bat because that's another show. But Jason's like, no. I was like, all right, fine. What if we just call it the Force Casteroo?
Oh, dang. That's crafty. No.
Yeah.
I want to know it.
We would not have gotten. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask, do you remember what ultimately tipped it towards the Wampa's Lair? Do you remember, was there anything there you're just like, okay, yeah, that's the one?
I think it was the fact that the Wampa's Lair was going to be a bit more understandable. Like, Blue Milk Boys, a little bit too in-joke for what we were trying to do. Wampa was a bit more, broadly speaking, a Star Wars thing than the Blue Milk stuff was.
I gotcha. Yeah.
I think that's what ultimately tipped it. Plus, we had a big influence from the Sarlacc pit, so we were like, let's do another. Have another creature podcast out there.
And also, which is kind of I mean, I love those guys at the Sarlacc, but I love Matt and Chris, and they were obviously a huge influence in starting the show. And of course, like Riley Blanton from Star Wars Report bringing us into the network so early was super helpful. And Riley has been a constant coach with helping me with the techie side of podcasting. So he deserves a huge thank you.
Yes.
And but the thing with Matt and Chris in the Sarlacc pit is I was trying to think of like other locations, and I know we had something that had to do with like Cloud City too, because obviously like I wanted to do Cloud City something. I don't know, maybe like the Tiban.
Bespin Boys.
Bespin Boys. Ooh, that would have been fun. The Bespin Report.
Oh man.
Riley would have been like, "You can't be in our network now." I'm like, "Son of a bantha."
Right.
Bantha. Wait.
Bantha Poodoo. That's what we should have called the show. Because if people are like, "You guys suck," we'll be like, "Yeah."
People out there who called our podcast Bantha Poodoo. So
icky, cool.
So Jason, like we did do a poll last episode where we asked folks to just share some of their favorite things about the show in general, and as always, the Larians were very generous in their responses. But before you hop into those, I just have a really quick question for you.
Okay.
Actually, more of a statement.
Which is it?
It's not the north or the south side.
No, it's not.
It's not the east or the west side.
No, it's not.
It's the dark side.
You are correct. For all you beta haters out there, we'll blow your planet up. All right. Shall I head over to our poll responses here?
Do it.
All right. Do it. This isn't so much of a poll because everybody kind of said something different. So we're just kind of going to read through some of the responses here. And, thank you everyone for your kind words in advance. But over on Facebook, Jeffrey Fishbach says, I just love everything about it, from the character discussions, film breakdowns, and everything in between. I really liked when you played the radio dramas. Bobby Gordon says, all the impressions, but especially Foden Bede. Carl? I listen to tons of Star Wars podcasts, Bobby continues and says, but I can honestly say that you guys seem to have the most fun. Well, we better.
I mean, we don't like to not have fun.
No,
exactly. We don't come here to have a bad time, honestly. But no, I completely agree with that. That's what drew me to you guys as well, is that, out of listening to tons and tons of Star Wars podcasts, I don't know if you guys know, but there's a lot of Star Wars podcasts.
I was unaware. I thought there was only 3 others. The Force Cast, Full of Sith, and the Star Wars Report. Are there others?
Maybe.
I
don't know. You're going to have to widen those horizons, take your first steps into a larger world.
Okay, that's fair.
But I was like, wow, these guys seem to be having more fun than anyone else out here.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. I mean, I like to think we are, but at least it comes across on the podcast.
Yeah.
Eliezer Rodriguez says, everything. Bring back the radio dramas.
Ooh.
Nice plug.
Yeah.
Barry Jones says 2 words, fellas. Katie Horn.
Boom.
Pshaw.
Look at Katie.
Was there even a podcast before Katie Horn?
I mean,
there really wasn't. Whenever I think of Katie Horn, I just have to ask myself,
Look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh.
It's Katie's theme song. Oh, yeah. Yeah!
That's my theme song, though.
It's Katie's theme song. When she walks into the lair, that's what's just blaring.
Exactly. Every time it makes me laugh. It's true, though, because everything makes me laugh.
Exactly. That's why it's your theme song.
Exactly. Oh, man.
Pass out over here. I'm laughing so hard. Kevin Wong, however, says, you guys laugh a good amount, and that makes me chuckle as well. So, there you go.
Wait, are you saying every time we make you laugh?
Interesting. Interesting. Every time we make you laugh, you can't help but chuckle. Interesting.
Right.
I missed it. Sorry, let's go back to the beginning. No biggie. Yeah.
I still got some more, Carl.
All right.
Carl, you can't keep hitting me with that song.
Okay.
My
promises.
sternum hurts.
All right. Watch as like the Wampus Lair gets sued after our 300th episode by Nickelback.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Well, whatever. As long as I get to meet Chad Kroger, I'm fine with it. I'll just be like, "Hey, Chad, yeah." I'll be like, "I don't sound like that." I'll be like, "Sure, you do, yeah."
You walk into the courtroom and and you're just like, "Oh, thank you, sir, for suing me. Thank you so much.
It's so great to meet you, yeah." I'll be like, every time I look at this suit, yeah, I think I got to meet Chad Kroger, yeah.
I don't even remember how that song became such an in-joke. I just remember that you guys used to play it a lot, and every time I would have to turn off the podcast and sit down. I would be laughing so hard.
I feel like Nickelback is the one band that captures the feel of the Wampus Lair. Powerful rock, great lyrics.
Stop that right now.
And a little bit of aggression. Not too much. Just enough.
Yeah, we're totally
That definitely defines Jason, at least.
Oh.
So.
It's like his spirit.
Yeah.
It's your spirit song. It's just, if we cracked open your head, that song would come like a music box. If we turned your arm like a crank, that song would come out of you, Jason.
And like, when A New Hope comes on and you're watching with Jason and like that the Tannin Fork comes flying overhead and he just turns and punches you in the face because he's so excited. And you're like, oh, I thought this was going to be a pleasant experience. He's like, this is.
The opening of A New Hope is like a punch in the face in the best way possible. All right.
I'm dizzy. I need a minute.
All right. Well, let me read a few more of these before we, send the entire podcast to the emergency room for, passing out. Patrick Kotev says the duels and the radio broadcast plus you two talking Star Wars. Well, thanks, Patrick. Philip Liebold says, I love the personal anecdotes and reflections. For me, Star Wars is ultimately about one's subjective reactions to the media, which is why I love listening to your podcast. For example, as much as I adore the OT, I love that your podcast is a place to celebrate and enjoy all eras and media of Star Wars. Well, excellent, Philip.
Yeah, Philip's great. Remember when he and Stephanie took that, which is his wife, they took us out for coffee at Celebration Anaheim? That was so nice.
Was. I have not seen Philip in a while, and
I
missed him at Phoenix Comic-Con this year, and I'm sad about that.
You know what you could always do, though, is you could just, grab a photograph of him.
Well, I'm about ready to, throw my Dr. Pepper through the Skype machine at you, Carl.
Sorry, Jason.
I had just got my...
Sorry.
I had just
blame Philip.
Dang it, Philip.
I've got Twitter responses if you want those.
Yes, please.
Yeah, that's fair.
Katie is about to die over there. On Twitter at Porkbach, who is Jeffrey Fishbach, who sent in us a Facebook response, says, I know I love to reply on Facebook, but I'd like to leave one here too. I have to agree with Neil. All of it. Plus, it was you guys that inspired me to want to do my own Star Wars podcast. At Wampus Lair was the first Star Wars podcast I listened to and still my favorite. Well, thank you, at Porkbach. And speaking of the aforementioned Neil Lowry, at Lowry Neil simply gave us a GIF of Han Solo saying, all of it. So there you go. At Jim C. Capron says, your Stardust episode was my favorite because I had a blast talking to you guys about Jyn Erso. Yes, Jim was on the podcast with us for that episode. It was a fantastic episode.
Oh, it was.
Almost as good as the mall episode that Katie was on.
Yeah.
No, I remember the Jyn Erso Stardust discussion. That was one of my favorites. It was really good. Jim, you were amazing.
Yeah, and this is I think I said this not too long ago, but we've been so fortunate, Jason, doing this show for as long as we have because we've met so many amazing people through it, both in person and obviously the majority, through the online community, but. And it's just a constant reminder of how, like all of you, we're just Star Wars fans, and like all of you, just like we obviously, I'd like to think we do have some good insights about Star Wars. If 300 episodes worth of them, and they're not probably all great insights, but so do all of you, and that's the great thing about this. And that was kind of the purpose of why we started that whole pledge level on Patreon, was so we could try to get some more of you to be empowered if you don't have time to do a regular show, to at least be on this. And Jim was the first to do it and just blew me away with his... No,
Katie was first.
Oh, she was? Whoops. Oh, crap, Katie. I'm sorry, Katie. That's right. You were the first. Son of a gun. That's all right. Sorry, Jim. Yeah, nuts. Jim's probably like, why am I not on the show more regularly? So, Jim just unsubscribed, unfollowed, and deleted.
Yeah, fun fact, I pushed Jim out of the way and then kicked down the door. Hello, Carl and Jason, I'm here.
And
ignore that man screaming in the hall. Ignore him.
Nickelback came on really loud and she just stole me. So.
Oh my gosh.
But no, Jim, and I love following Jim on Twitter, just like you, Katie, and so many people on Twitter. But I do really want to Jim has such a incredibly deep understanding of Star Wars, and his way of articulating that is just incredible. I love when someone else just makes me think about something that I never would have thought of. And that's the, like going back to what Philip said, with the immense amount of subjectivity, right? Star Wars is art. All art is is subjective. That's why you can never say such and such is the best. No, you really can't say that, because the best is a personal preference. And the thing I love about so many of the folks that listen to the show is, for them, the best means so many different things, and they're so respectful of everyone else's best and so open to listening to why somebody else loves it. I know for a fact that a lot of people have come around to that balcony scene in Revenge of the Sith because of how much love we've given it. And, and I think people genuinely respect people that have well thought out responses to things, right? Like, there are things from Last Jedi that I really struggled to come around to, and just listening to, folks that listen to the show, listening to friends, listening to you, Katie, like, people continue to unpack it that have such a deep love and appreciation for it. It hits them in a way that it didn't hit me, so I can appreciate it more because I learned from someone who did get hit right, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I totally get that, because when a piece of art or a piece of Star Wars touches someone and they feel like they understand it, and it's like it's resonating for them, I want to see it the way they see it. And so many of the people that have reached out to us, reached out to me on Twitter, reached out to the show, to the Wampa's Lair Facebook, and left their comments there. I can see things in a way I didn't see them before, and it really opens my eyes and becomes more beautiful. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience, hearing from all of you.
Yeah. And I tried to make a few notes, and I literally made very few notes. But kind of what we wanted to do with this episode, and I apologize that, and obviously in some ways it is a bit, I don't want to say self-serving, but it is obviously self-reflective, which I think is worth doing at a milestone place like this. But, I really wanted to try to think about, okay, well, after doing 300 episodes, and we've done over 300, to be honest, because we've done other little things along the way, too. But even doing 300 episodes of a Star Wars podcast, how has it affected our view and of Star Wars in general and our fandom, maybe more in particular? And I know one of the things that I feel so, lucky to be able to do is that anytime I have like what I think is a good thought or cool, interesting perspective on Star Wars, I can throw that on Twitter. I can throw it up on Facebook. I can talk about it on the show and get feedback. Like, and obviously, like, this is, the internet is a wonderful thing for this, is the ability to immediately be able to share that with the community and get other people's perspectives. And, it's so great that we're able to do this, that anytime, like, I'm watching a Star Wars movie and I'm like, oh my gosh, this would make a great podcast. And I'm like, well, great, good thing I have one. And I like text Jason and I'm like, let's do this. And he's like, okay. And then I'm like, Katie, let's do it. And she's like, no, we're going to do this. I'm like, okay. I'm just kidding.
No, I have the best ideas.
Yes, you do. Right, there we go.
That is not untrue. Jim did have a little bit else more to say, though. So
sorry, Jim.
He says, in general, though, I like how you guys approach topics from different perspectives because it makes the discussions even more well-rounded and insightful while still staying positive. Yeah, that's another big thing we try to do here on the show, is to stay positive. Even when we disagree on things or don't particularly like certain aspects of movies or books or whatever, we definitely do our best to remain positive because someone else might love what we don't. So.
Right.
Yeah. Well, listen, every Star Wars character is someone's favorite Star Wars character, So I would never want to try to take away someone's joy.
Yeah. And if your favorite Star Wars character is Malakili, we need to talk. And you need to be on the show. Because everybody loves Malakili. But I don't know that anyone has him as their favorite character. So that is my challenge to you. If you're listening and you're like, that's my favorite character, you need to be on the show. Everybody
Carl has threatened to cosplay as Malakili a couple of times.
Yeah, I have. I like, and then I get full really easy at dinner. I'm like, I'm never going to get there.
I do have two more Twitter responses if you want me to get through those.
Yeah.
All right, I'll run through these real quick and then we can move on. At Balls in Play says, just wanted to say congrats on 300 episodes. I'll always be thankful for how each of you influenced my podcast in so many ways. Your evergreen topical format is the best. We know. My favorite episode was the mall episode. Katie's been a great addition to the Wampa's Lair and such natural rapport. And then at Jedi Jack 13, our buddy Jackson says, my favorite parts of the Wampa's Lair are the top 5 episodes and matchups when Carl and Jason do the foot and bead. Carl. And when Carl says, yeah, or know what I'm saying.
I don't know what you're saying, yeah. Okay.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I also really liked it when Jason said Obi-Wan Kenobi like the Swedish chef. Well, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay. And the Swedish chef. Anyway, there you go. I
have noticed, and obviously there were more of these comments even on Facebook too, and I know we'll hit some of those in a little bit, but a lot of people were talking about we've run through the radio dramas twice, the entire series twice now over the years we've done the show, and a lot of people pointed that out, which is funny because we haven't had that in like 2 years at least. It's been a while, and I've actually just been re-listening to them myself. I just finished The Empire Strikes Back this morning on my way to work, and I love A New Hope and Empire. Return of the Jedi is fine. It's nothing special in my opinion, mainly because and I've actually been doing a lot of research on this because. Spoiler alert, Scott Ryfin's going to be on in probably next month, and we're going to really break down the radio dramas. And I know a lot of folks love Scott Ryfin because how can you not? He's the bomb. And but starting next episode, so episode 301, we'll go back to episode 1 of the A New Hope radio drama and start playing one of those at the end of every episode. So be prepared to see longer run times, but that doesn't mean we're just talking the whole time.
Right.
Well, maybe you won't be talking the whole time, but
the radio dramas will be playing, and Katie will still be quietly talking in the background.
Exactly. Look at this photograph.
They're like, wait a minute, what are they talking about right now?
Is that Katie Horn? Yeah,
it's always Katie Horn. Yeah.
It's always Katie.
Now, Jason, I really wanted to play this clip of something, which it's about a minute long. So please bear with me.
Oh God, is it Nickelback?
It's not Nickelback. It is, but it is. It's my favorite singer and songwriter, Rob Thomas, who is this. He's the lead singer of Matchbox 20, which was my favorite band all through high school and college, and I love them. And the funny thing about Matchbox 20 is they're just another '90s rock band. If you don't know who Matchbox 20 is, it's probably because you're either too young or you hated them, and I'm sorry for you because they're amazing. But the thing I love about Rob Thomas is the man is extremely self-reflective, and he has like a very incredible. I mean, he is a songwriter, but he has a very incredible way of articulating himself. And I just randomly watched this interview from 2012 the other night at work. I was bored. Well, actually, I was just exhausted and I needed a quick break. And for some random reason, I watched this interview with Rob Thomas, and he talks about what their band means to other people. And it made me really think a lot about our show. And like Katie, like you said, there are hundreds of Star Wars podcasts, and they're all amazing. I mean, the ones I've listened to so many. I've heard a few that are not good. Some because of like audio quality was really bad, and some because the content was, the hosts were terrible. But that's good. I mean, that goes without saying.
We're not naming names.
No, and I'm not trying to like disparage anyone, but I'm sure there's people that think that about us, and that's fine. But what I really like about Rob Thomas is how he breaks down how he understood Matchbox 20's success, and it just made me think a lot about our podcast and what it means in the Star Wars podcasting world. So I'm just going to play this clip really quick. It's not very long.
I mean, I think going through this, like all you got to do is just watch a whole lot of rock documentaries about the biggest bands in the face of the earth, and I don't just mean success-wise. I mean the ones that changed generations. The one that, when Nirvana came out, like I remember where I was when I first heard that. When Zeppelin came out, when the Stones would come out, like you could see that there are certain people that, and what they do. Like I feel like what I do is I'm there and I write songs about people, and they're going to relate to individuals, and people are going to like it, But there are some people that are there to change the cultural zeitgeist. There are some people that are there to just shake up the entire system and the way that people listen to music or experience music. And I realized, somewhere around the end of the first record that we're not that band. You know what I mean? I think that we're a band that means a lot to a lot of people, and I think that we're a really fortunate band. But I just think that, for some bands, and we could get to Kanye big. I mean, we could play nothing but stadiums, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're that band. Do you know?
Yeah. So I really loved. I love Rob Thomas. I think he's an incredibly insightful dude. And I love, like you said, their first album went like triple platinum or whatever. It's the famous song "Push 3 a.m." that was all big, and like it came out in '96. I just love that he's able to understand that. I realized after that, like, we're not going to be one of these bands that changes the world, but we're going to mean a lot to a lot of people. And that's a good thing. That's one heck of an accomplishment. And I feel like that's kind of what we are in the Wampus Lair. Is like, I don't think that we've changed the podcasting world. I don't think we've changed the Star Wars podcasting world. And I don't say that to diminish us, but I think we do mean a lot to a lot of people, and we've built one heck of a community, and that's something to be proud of. And I felt like his words rang true for me, because it's like, yeah, like and again, I'm not saying this to disparage any other podcast, but we're not full of Sith. We're not Rebel Force Radio or the Force Cast that launched it all. Like, these were shows that came in out of nowhere and kind of really just shook things up. And that's amazing. But, like we've always been honest about, like, so much of the show was really kind of
just a couple of fanboys talking Star Wars.
Yeah, and we really built that. We built the framework off of Sarlacc Pit, and they deserve credit for being kind of, one of the earliest podcasts that was just ultimately talking about evergreen topics, like topics that don't grow old. Like, yeah, they always do news at the top of the show, but they always have these topics. I still sometimes go back and listen to some of the early episodes from like 2009. And they're still great. Like, I'll fast forward through the new stuff, but, I love that evergreen topic. And like, Full of Sith obviously does that as well. And they've got Brian Young, who is just, his mind for Star Wars is unmatched, in my opinion. And you've got people like David Collins doing shows now. Like, these are guys that just have the type of mind for Star Wars that few do. And I don't say that to put anyone else down. But some people are just really gifted, with their way of thinking about things. Also, just knowing how to get those thoughts out so that they're, well fed. I'll look at a Brian Young tweet and he'll have 325 likes. I'll look at one of our good ones, 20. And that's fine.
I know that feel. Yep.
And it's not to put us down or anything like that, but I just think some people are very gifted with the type of insights they do have. And somebody like Brian is fortunate enough to have a great podcast, and he's got a great cast around him in Holly and Mike. But like, again, to be fair, I've heard so many incredibly insightful things from just folks that listen to our show too, like Jim, like you, Katie, like so many people, like Neil Lowry. There's so many people. Patrick Rainier, we got to give him a shout out, because Patrick sends us an email almost after every episode, and he's always got some great insight as to things we said. And Patrick's really young, and I love his kind of young perspective. And I don't say young as an immature; I just mean young because he's literally a younger guy, but he's got a great perspective for Star Wars. And again, it just goes back to how fortunate we are that we get to interact with people with such great minds for Star Wars. And I love that we're able to create content that, lots of people can just really enjoy, even if we're not going to change their worldview about Star Wars in a big monumental way, and that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. I tell myself that at night. So, and then, I'll just like pick up something. My eyes are so red during it.
Someone needs to take that mixing board away from Carl.
Just slap it out of your hand.
Yeah, if Jason was here right now, I'd definitely get a New Hope to the face.
Yeah, you probably would. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
I like that. I like that quote, because I think you're right. At least from our perspective, Carl, we're not going to go out there and completely transform the Star Wars podcasting community. We're not going to completely shake it all up and be some sort of ground shaking, earth shattering thing. It's not going to be our MO. We're too low key. We're too laid back, too fun. To even attempt to do that. But that's fine, because we have our niche. We have our the way we like doing things. We're We want to be that place where everyone can just come in, sit down, and talk the wars, you know? And that's what I love about this. And, you know, it's not going to, you know, completely transform the podcasting community, but it's going to be a fun place that people like to hang out every so often. So,
yeah. You know what it is? You know what it is? So there's like the big podcasts are like the Luke Skywalkers, and they're out there transforming the world, and we're like R2 and 3PO hanging back, and there's people out there that their favorite is R2 and 3PO. That's
right.
You know,
there's somebody on this podcast right now. I mean, Carl.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, me. I like Malakili more than them. So I'm just kidding. I don't, but.
then again, R2 and 3PO, I don't want to. They're war heroes, both of them. They do a lot. Maybe we're more like the Dex's Diner.
Yeah.
Right.
What does that mean? It means I'm in charge here. Oh my goodness!
I can't do an R2 whistle. Can you do an R2 whistle, Jason?
No, not really.
Do. I can imitate it. There you go.
That is R2 as I can get. But what do we got next? Because I know we got a couple of emails but we might want to save those for a little bit later. What do we want to hit up next here?
Well, I kind of wanted to ask you, we've been talking about, how great it is to be able to reach out to people and have all of these, different social medias where we can, host a conversation. What was it like when you guys first started, like 7 years ago? These platforms weren't really available, were they? What was the fandom like? Yeah,
was still pretty integral, and so for the longest time, Facebook was our headquarters on social media because that's where a lot of the discussion happened, and it was hard to generate interactions at first, but we were helped out by some of our friends, our podcasting friends, who started listening to the show, and so they would comment and kind of get the conversation going on social media. So when we would ask for matchup responses and things like that, we had episodes where we had like 5 responses. That was it, and that was I remember those days, and we're like, man, I really hope we start getting more because this is slim pickings. And sometimes it was a total of 5 with just, including Carl and I. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great though. Like, but, I would have been jazzed about 5. I'd be like, 5? Oh my gosh, there's 2 of us. We just doubled.
I mean, it was great because we were getting conversation and getting responses because we kind of really banked on it without having any proof that was going to work.
Wow.
So we're like, well, we want to basically, we're like, we need to have a hook to have people come back for next episode. Yeah. Let's do a matchup and get them to come back and find out who won.
Yeah, because we weren't confident enough that our content was good enough. So we're like, well, at least we'll get him with this little gimmick.
Right.
They're not going to care. Yeah, they're not going to care about who cares about conversation.
We knew they were turning it off right after the matchup results. So
yeah, right. Yes.
But to be fair, I remember when we started that concept, it came out of it was an idea to do an episode actually. Oh my gosh, one of the things I literally when I saw Solo the very first time, I was sitting next to my friend Greg when when L3 goes, "Whoa, what was that?" Terrace Kasi, I lost my freaking mind. I was so excited because I loved that video game. I never even owned it. I would just play it at my cousin's. And I loved it because it was it came out when Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter were really on the rise, and now we got this Star Wars game where you could play Han Solo and actually beat up Darth Vader, unlike at Cloud City, and it was amazing. I loved Masters of Terrace Kasi. It was one of my favorite games, and I think it was on PlayStation 1. And maybe other systems as well, but that's the one I remember playing it on. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that would be such a great topic. I was like, Jason, let's pick a few characters that we'd love to see fight each other and go. And Jason's like, what if we just did that as an every week segment? And I was like, that's a way better idea. Yes. And that's where the ideas of matchups came from is, basically just spitballing the idea from Masters of Terrace Kasi. May that game forever be loved.
That was, I think we started that about like 3 or 4 episodes in.
Yeah, it was
had our
early.
first match.
It was really, really early. Because I remember one of the first ones I thought of, and we have done it, we did do this matchup again not too long ago, but again, it was like 6 years apart. But the one I always thought of was that scene in Attack of the Clones when Mace Windu comes out and draws down on Jango and goes to, he's standing there nose to nose with Dooku. I'm like, holy crap, who would win that fight? And that's that was the first duel I really want. And like Jason said, I think we had like 4 responses.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure Dooku won the first time, but I think he won the second time too. I'm trying to remember.
We're due for round 3. We got to do.
We got to do round 3. Yeah.
I think Mace won the first one actually.
Okay. But I'm
then,
almost positive Dooku won not too long ago when we did it.
Yeah, he did. No, he did.
But yeah,
as he should have.
Yes. And we've picked up this, we picked up the slack these last 2 years without having the This Is Madness tournament on StarWars.com. So, and we ran our own these last 2 years, which were a lot of fun.
Yes.
So yeah,
I've only just like voted in them, and just voting in them I think is a lot of fun. I love those.
I remember going to work every morning and like putting those together, and I'm like, this is so much better than my actual job. And like, I like my job. I really like my job. I'm very fortunate. I do really enjoy what I do for a living. But I was like, still though, like if I could just get paid to keep doing this all day, I would. And then maybe like the occasional student's like, tell me about God. I'll be like, all right, hold on a minute. I'm busy.
Hang on.
I'm busy pitting Cad Bane against Embo, and I always know who's going to win this stinking fight. And it's stupid because people pick Cad Bane. It's dumb.
No.
But let's talk about sin now because that's a sin. But,
oh my gosh, that's perfect.
Yeah, there you go. I hope that answers your question.
Oh man. Okay, wait. This seems appropriate. Let's see now. Okay, I know the answer to this, and some of the people listening might not know the answer, but I feel like a lot of people don't. What was episode 1 even about? You guys are sitting down to record for the very first time. What are you guys talking about in the Chili Wampa's lair?
Nickelback.
Nickelback.
Yeah. How good would it have been if Nickelback had a cameo in Revenge of the Sith?
No.
Like,
That's
in
what you're talking
sync.
about.
No.
90 minutes of
obviously,
Nickelback
like
talk.
something Jason and I both really loved the Sarlacc Pit did was they did these top 5 shows, and we're like, this is so perfect. This is a great way to start. So we did top 5 OT elements. Although
OT moments.
Top 5 OT moments, and episode 2 was top 5 PT moments.
Yep.
And it was just like, you just got to go for something real fun right off the bat. And
it was something fun and easily accessible to anybody. So we're like, let's just kind of get something out there because we, not only did we want to get something that anybody could kind of jump in and have fun with, but we also wanted to have something where people could start getting to know us.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I
Yeah.
put the torture scene in there because it was like episode 1. I'm like, I want people to think I'm like a masochist, but I might have made it an honorable mention. But
I don't remember.
Yourself.
Yeah,
I remember the torture scene did come in fairly early, but I don't think it was that early.
Okay, thank God. I probably wrote it in my notebook, and then I was like, wait a minute. I don't even know Jason well enough yet.
You're like, I don't know if I could share this part of me with him yet.
Yeah. I mean, this would be about as bad as going with Blue Milk Boys. So,
Right.
Welcome to Blue Milk Boys. I love the torture scene.
And this is when Jason starts going, I've got a bad feeling about this.
I don't sense anything.
All of your first viewers are all 5 stars. Blue Milk Boys, torture scene, 5-star review.
These guys are dark. I like it. It's like Christopher Nolan's podcast about Star Wars.
Right, exactly. And then all of a sudden Jason starts going, oh, boy, I love you. And they're like, worst podcast ever.
Yeah. Hello, boyos.
When did Count Dooku get here? he heard we were going to do round 3 of his matchup.
Yeah. We should talk about all the failed things we've done over the years.
Oh no!
Like anything, anybody out there who's creative knows that when you are faithful to something in a creative process over a long time, I mean, you're gonna always try new things that don't work. And remember, Jason, we tried video casts for a little while there. We started a YouTube channel. We would basically just record ourselves on Skype talking about topics that we would essentially condense into 15 to 20 minutes. Those didn't last very long.
I think we had like 5 or 6 that ended up on the iTunes feed.
I think I'm more
and
of
I
a
think
choker
there's, I
necklace
think there's
in
an
one of
error
them.
with the first one
So-
now because I don't think it's able to be downloaded anymore. But yeah, no, like they were fun, but like we didn't have the technology to really make that kind of thing work.
Right.
And it was just
I remember when I finally bought like a decent, like the first decent mic I bought was the Yeti by Blue, the microphone company Blue. They make a USB mic, the Yeti. I'm like, oh, this thing's going to be great. And I remember I used that thing for a solid year talking into the wrong part of it. And like, because I remember one time,
my God.
yeah, how stupid am I? And I remember one time I was just like, I was listening, like I'll usually just like listen just for a couple minutes to every episode I put out just to make sure everything sounds okay, and I'll fast forward throughout just to make sure everything's consistent. And I was listening to it one time and I'm like, man, why do I sound so darn tinny? So I finally hopped on the internet and I'm like, how to get the best sound out of your Blue Yeti. And the first thing, it shows you how to set it up. I'm like, I don't talk into that part.
Oh no! Oh my God!
And
now
like-
you have me all paranoid. I'm like, am I talking to the right person? I'm like, I don't.
no, you sound great. You
Yeah,
sound
you
great.
do. Yeah.
So-
But it's just, it's so funny that like, but I love to like, but it's been such a fun learning process too.
Yeah.
Like it's fun like when you try things that don't work.
The greatest teacher failure is.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. Remember, like, and I think what we've learned from some of these things is sometimes we just tried to overextend ourselves, or we tried to process things too much. Right? Remember, for a while there, you would introduce the show in a character voice, right? Remember when you used to do that?
I did. That was.
And it just became taxing though, because then it's like thinking about, all right, well, who am I going to do? Okay, I got to make sure I've got the impression right. And I think what those failures taught us is just like, well, let's just be ourselves. Let's just streamline the things that we know work.
Yeah.
And
man, I had forgotten that I did that.
Yeah.
That was the first year, right? It was still
maybe-
year 1, I think.
Probably, yeah. And, we were also very intentional about trying to get other people that had shows to record little intros, right, that we'd throw at the beginning of the show. Like, this is Riley Blanton from the Star Wars Report, and you're listening to the Wampus Lair. We had, Lord Bruticus,
Oh my gosh, Joe Mignano.
Joe Mignano, right? Like, and he would always do really fun stuff. And, and that was the thing in the early days. Facebook was pretty much the only form of social media. I don't know if Twitter existed then. It probably did. But
It did,
Okay.
but it wasn't nearly as
it wasn't what
popular.
it is now.
Yeah.
But whenever we'd post an episode, I'd always make sure to share it to the Starlack Pit Facebook page, to the Star Wars Report, and the Dark Empire Facebook page, because they had so much more audience than we did that it really helped build our audience. And we don't do that anymore. There's always cross promotion on Twitter, right? Like, being part of the Star Wars Report network is great because there's so many great shows and great folks in the network. But those early days, like, you always did that. And whenever the Star Wars Report, when we finally were a little bit established, whenever they'd, record something, we'd be sure to post it as well, just to make sure that folks that listen to us also are aware of that. So, yeah, it took a while to build something. But it's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, that's good.
Got any more questions for us, Katie?
I have a question. It's a pretty hot button, I think, topic. I know that you guys you're both going to want to answer. So I think I'm going to start with Jason. Okay. Start with Jason. Throwing it to you first. Carl, you'll get your turn.
Shutting up, sir.
Calm down, Carl. Carl.
Katie.
All right.
It's tearing
Jason.
up my heart when I'm with you, but when we are apart, I feel it too.
Sorry, that's just how I'm feeling right now.
I told you, calm down.
Right, sorry.
Calm down, Carl.
Shutting up, sir.
She's trying to ask me a question.
Okay.
Yes, it's like, now that I'm on the podcast, I'm going to destroy the podcast with these divisive questions. I will be amazed if you guys are still friends after these
Love
questions,
it.
honestly. All right.
Okay. Can't wait to be
All right,
enemies.
Jason, you ready? Okay. Do you want to buy some death sticks?
You don't want to sell me death sticks.
I don't want to sell you death sticks.
Want to go home and rethink your life.
I want to go home and rethink my life. Carl, what about you? You want to buy some death sticks?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how it's done.
How much? I heard there's a BOGO going on right now. So
Destined.
That tells you just about everything you need to know about Carl. And
I heard they take me places. Like I could get to Dagobah on them. So yes.
You're probably not wrong. Great question.
So
Thank
great.
You, thank you.
Yeah, I am, and this question is actually for both of you because, like, even like Katie, I know like we've just kind of formally brought you officially in like in the last month or so, but but you've been very like popular on Twitter, like you.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, it's true. You've built up quite the following there because you have such great insight, and you're very fun and funny, and like you're fun to interact with. And obviously, Jason,
She talks all the time.
yes. Yeah. She knows all the names of the birds. She used to lay out on the sand to let the sun dry her. But you know what, Katie? I don't like sand. It's coarse, it's rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Everywhere.
But what is it like, what do you think now having some level of community interacting with you? And I don't want to put this word into your mouth too. So part one is, do you feel in some way an obligation to making sure that you're always saying something new about Star Wars? And secondly, how does that affect the way you now view Star Wars? Like when you sit down to watch Star Wars, do you feel like it's sometimes a different experience knowing that you have an audience that is curious about what you take away from that viewing?
I don't think I feel obligated. No, I do, because I'll do these like live tweets on Twitter when I sit down to watch a Star Wars movie, and I'll say like funny things and make jokes and, post like my thoughts about the movie. Sometimes when I sit down, I do feel that initial like panic, like, oh no, what if I'm not funny today? But then I'll get about 10 minutes into the movie and be all like, oh wait, no, I'm hilarious. Nah, I'm funny. I do feel that sense of, oh no, I've built up, I've told everybody, hey, I'm going to live tweet. The jokes are coming. And then I'm like, oh no, but what if I don't think of anything funny? I guess in that sense, obligation, but I never feel obligated to say something new or to come up with something, insightful. I don't know. I just say what I want, basically. If I think it, I post it on Twitter. I try not to think about it too hard because that's when, ego gets in the way. That's when stress and anxiety get in the way. If it gets in the way of me hitting the send button on Twitter specifically, then I just don't want to think about it. I just want to post it and have fun. I use Twitter very much as like that outlet. There are people who maintain their Twitter and they want to stay on brand. They're always thinking about what they're posting, but that's just not how I use the platform. I use it as an outlet. When I come here, I guess I'm all like, I do think harder about what I want to say. And, we come up with these topics. I know last week when we were going to talk about what it means to force train. And I was like, oh, I had things I want to say about the heroine's journey. So I have to sit down and actually kind of organize my thoughts. But I never feel obligated to do that. It's just something I really want to do. Yeah.
What about you, Jason? And thank you, Katie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm kind of on two minds about this. In a sense, I feel not necessarily an obligation, but almost a responsibility to not necessarily say something new, but to say something to keep the conversation going. Something that, either has been said, but in a different way, or something, give something a slightly different twist, maybe say something new, but something to, for our listeners to keep the conversation going, something that they'll take with them to spread elsewhere. I kind of, on the one hand, I feel like I want to do that, and I feel the need to do that sometimes, and I will go and seek out, different things, in order to stay informed, so I can make more educated opinions. I I'm so glad I've signed up for the Audible thing because I'm finally being able to start catching up on some of these novels that I've missed. Lost Stars, amazing, like probably best new canon novel out there. Finished listening to that one in 48 hours. Like it was really good. So, so I more actively pursue a wider breadth of knowledge in order to try and maintain the ability to have the kind of conversations that we have on this show. But then when it comes down to it and we're sitting down to actually do the recording, I've got my ideas, my thoughts kind of, lined up and everything. But we sit down, we record, and then I just want to talk with Carl and Katie.
Yeah.
And just have fun. So I've already kind of, pre-gamed the conversation a little bit. But then once we actually, get to the podcast itself, the prep is kind of just marinated enough back there that I don't have to worry about it. And it just comes out in the natural flow of the conversation. Because at that point, I just want to have fun. I'm talking with my best buddy Carl about Star Wars, my best buddy Katie about Star Wars, and that's the exciting and the fun thing. And so when I'm away from the mic, I feel a bit of more, the responsibility and the desire to try and have the knowledge base and the thoughts to keep conversations going and to maintain the kind of level and the conversation that we've been able to develop here on the show. But when it comes to actually recording, whatever. I just want to talk Star Wars. So
that's fair. I don't blame you.
That is so much of what I love about this show and what I love about talking with you guys. It's kind of what I was saying earlier, where you guys just seem to be having more fun than everybody else. Of course, I love thoughtful podcasts, and you guys are very thoughtful. And some podcasts organize themselves like almost like essays. They're going through and really digging into things. And of course, you guys do that sometimes, but there's an ease to your conversations, and you really do just seem like buddies sitting down and talking. And that's what made me want to be part of the conversation is to come in. Yeah.
And just to throw this out there, that's something that developed over years.
Yeah.
It was not that easy at first. I remember, there were lots of awkward pauses and like weird, trains of thought that didn't quite connect early on. It was one of those awkward things, and it was so much fun to work our way through that. But at this point now, like, Carl is probably reading my mind and can tell you the next sentence coming out of my mouth. But
I love Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, that's very true.
You were little younglings. That's nice.
Yes. But yeah, so that has the ability to just ease our way into a deep conversation on Star Wars built up over years of talking with each other about this stuff. And so, we don't just roll out of bed and have a really deep conversation about Luke Skywalker and being the chosen one or not. That's not something that just, we roll out of bed doing normally. But since we've been talking about Star Wars for so long together, we can do that. So
yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Do you remember for the first probably at least 2 years, maybe even 3 years, we would play music the entire show?
Yes.
And I hated putting that. I mean, I liked it at first because, again, that was something Sarlacc Pit used to do. They would have Star Wars music playing constantly underneath the entire episode. I loved that. So we did that as well for the first couple of years, and
I've never heard any of those. That's crazy.
They're very early ones.
That's ancient history. Like,
wow.
And you'd have to dig it up with your photographs. But I hated putting those together because I would have to go through and like drag every song in and just we would record for like an hour and a half, and then it would take me like another 40 minutes to do that. And I really didn't like doing it. And I remember I asked Chris Smith one time, I was like, is there a quicker way to do it? And Chris told me, he goes, I actually have like a playlist of the stuff that I just drag in. I'm like, I could do that. But I remember some people were like, we got some iTunes reviews saying they're like, the show's great, but like sometimes the music gets a little too loud. right, and it overtakes the conversation. And I remember Riley used to say that a lot. He's like, Carl, like, I think you guys are doing great stuff. He's like, you really should rethink doing the music. And eventually I was like, you know what? That's a great idea because it takes forever anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't think you need it, right? Like, it's a podcast. It's a conversation piece. You don't need the music constantly. And I know some shows, like Scott Rifen still does it with My Star Wars Story. He always has music going in the background. And I remember early on, sometimes it would like, I remember being like, just come on, Scott, you don't need it right here. It's like overtaking the conversation. But, you know, he also heard a lot of the similar critiques, but he decided to keep it. But he did turn it down a lot. So it is very, very subtle now. You almost don't notice it. But he always wanted that there. And it was part of his vision to like inform the show. And I think it's perfect there. But I just don't, after a while, we're like, we don't need this anymore. And I was nervous at first because like I feel like a lot of people are going to get annoyed or say something's missing. But not once did we hear anybody complain.
No, we had no complaints when we dropped it, And
I loved having those 45 minutes back every night when we finished recording. So,
sure you did. So,
but
I know we spent like 2 or 3 weeks going back and forth as to whether or not we were going to cut that out. Because it was like, well, on the one hand, we like it because we like having all the music. The music is great and all this stuff. On the other hand, and it just took us about 2 or 3 weeks before we finally pulled the trigger and said, yeah, no, we're going to cut it out. That was one of those things that we really thought would work really well at first. And then as things went on, we're like, well, maybe not quite. But now we've got mixers and we can play music anytime we want to. And it's much better.
Don't do it. Carl, don't do it.
What?
He was going to do it.
What are you talking about?
I feel the pain with or without you.
Oh, what? They're in Attack of the Clones?
No.
Somewhere
Somewhere.
in the Lucasfilm archives. That's
Somewhere in
in
the
there.
Lucasfilm archives, there is NSYNC dressed as Jedi Knights in the Battle of
I
Geonosis.
bet you that. You know what else there is in the archives that we've still never gotten that drives me mad?
What?
The full extended torture scene in Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, dear God, of course there is.
I remember. I remember when the DVDs were released for the first time back in 2011. Yeah, because it was the year after I finished grad school. My first year
That's
of
the
teaching.
Blu-rays.
It was the Blu-rays. Thank you, Jason. The DVDs were in 2005 because I was a freshman. 2004. Yeah, I was a freshman in college. And they had like a cool like Revenge of the Sith teaser on it. But when they did the Blu-rays, it was my first year of teaching, and I took my first personal day so that I could just go home. No, that's right. I didn't take a personal day because I had to wait for Amazon Prime to deliver them. So it's like they probably won't be there until later in the day. I shouldn't take a personal day. And I remember going right home. They were waiting for me. And the first thing, of course, I did was throw in the deleted scenes from the original trilogy. I was like, oh, thank God, I'm finally going to get... And, there were obviously, like, spoilers that came out early, like, telling you the list of the deleted scenes, and I didn't see anything in there about the torture scene. I was like, well, it's a small thing. They probably wouldn't mention it. I was holding on more hope than Luke and Leia are looking outside of the frigate at the end of Empire Strikes Back. I had more hope than that. And I watched through every single one. I'm like, son of a Wampa's arm, why is that not there? And I'm still waiting for it. I will pay $1,000. I don't have $1,000, but I will pay $100 to see that.
If you think he's exaggerating, no, he will pay $100.
I will pay
to see that
$100
scene.
to see that scene.
Oh my gosh. What I wouldn't give to like that book from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basilea Frankweiler, the two kids like living in a museum. Like I want that, but in the Lucasfilm archives. I just want to be a kid living.
Yeah.
I mean,
that would
either
be...
Lucasfilm archives or at Rancho Obi-Wan.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
and just think of like if StarWars.com wanted to continue to like expand the content they offer. The Star Wars show is great, right? Like Andy and Anthony do such a great job with the show, and they have great guests. But how fun would it be if they also had now a subsidiary show where it was just called like the Lucasfilm Archives, and like every segment they would just show you something new, tell you a little bit about its history, something
my
you've never.
God.
Like, that would be so cool. It'd be like a cool little like you could even do it as a segment within the Star Wars show. I just think that would be so much fun. It'd be great. They could bring me
I
as a host. I mean, I'm
right,
very
exactly. I
personable.
mean, Carl.
So I'm sorry
Katie
my
and
hair
I
is
can all
thinning,
come
but,
down, and we can just run through the archives like mad people, finding things for this show.
They,
Exactly.
to be fair,
I have
don't.
my own like
Katie,
dust gloves for.
I'm worried that they wouldn't let you in with all your destructive joy. You know,
I
like
know, I would
to
be
be
so
fair,
happy.
they'd be like,
They're freaking-
Jason and Carl, you can come in. Katie, we feel like you'd be so overwhelmed that nothing would be left together. So I
like
love
sitting
this.
here-
Smashes it on the floor. That was the original Tantive 4.
It's already like in pieces. I'm like, but I brought glue. I'll fix it. I mean,
And Steve Sansweet's
like-
just standing there crying.
they're like, is she upset? It's like, no, she's so happy.
She's so happy.
No, this is her happy rage.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah. Now, if she's just touching it delicately, she's bored.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god. Yeah. No, she's looking at her phone. She's tapping. She's
Yeah.
tweeting. Like, no, she doesn't care. She's totally indifferent right now. No, if she's screaming and crying and breaking things, she's completely happy.
They'll be like, all right, listen, we'll just have to bring like extra things for Katie to break. Like bring in the old Kenner, bring in some Kenner Power of the Force 2 line stuff. She can break it.
Yes.
The He-Man Star Wars.
I just come in with like, I got like a satchel filled with like dinner plates. So every time I see something, I just smash a dinner plate on the floor.
Opa! Or like some Legos or something, you just smash.
Oh my God, I love it. So
They're like, no, you can't come in. And I'm like standing there and I'm holding like a flaming torch. And I'm like, why? Explain to me why I can't come in. Because you're going to burn the place to the ground out of joy. That's
why.
That's why.
So, Katie, so let me preface with this because I don't want to make it sound like we're being rude to Katie. Yeah. So when Jason and I, we were like, oh my gosh, we're getting close to 300. This is so exciting. And Katie, you are now officially part of the show. And we were like talking about like, oh, gee, like we should probably still have Katie on because she is the best addition to the show probably ever. Because everything else is just purely conceptual, but you're a person, and that's always better than concepts. But I was like, oh, but of those 300 episodes, like we've done a lot of them, and I was like, but so I off air, everybody, like I did ask Katie, I was like, would you mind maybe just preparing a couple questions to ask? And she was kind enough to say yes. So I was just wondering if you had any others.
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss on the 300th episode of the Wampa's Lair not to talk about the titular Wampa. Talk about the art, because you guys have had a little story going on with the different art for the Wampa's Lair.
Yeah.
Like it started off with you guys hanging upside down, and then didn't you escape at one point?
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
So,
and I think some people might not know who drew the art, even though it's one of your good friends.
Yeah, and I am a little ashamed that we're over an hour into this and we haven't mentioned Joe Hogan, because if you've been listening to the show a long time, like you've probably already heard, to be fair, Joe wasn't on that long ago because he made me jump on with him to do that Clone Wars saved episode.
Yes,
like you, Katie,
episode.
I think he was ready to start destroying stuff with joy.
Yeah.
Joe is one of my favorite people in the world. Like he's more than just a great collaborator on the show. Joe is a very good friend of mine, and that I met him the same weekend I met Jason. I didn't really interact with him that much that weekend, but I've been very fortunate. Joe and I are only 4.5 hours apart, so I'll go down to New York City. Joe has still never come to Boston to visit me. I'm going to pull that out on the air right now and call him out on it. Every time I hang out with him, I go down. But to be fair, there's a group of guys down there that we always hang out with. But Joe is, I remember early on working with him, the first thing he did, the thing of us hanging upside down. I was so excited to see that because I've never had a cartoon version of myself. I was so excited. And we were just so overjoyed with what Joe produced. And Joe is one of the most humble guys I've ever met. Joe is extremely gifted and talented, but he refuses to be praised. And it was funny because at first, we did have such a professional camaraderie because we didn't know him that well. But now, obviously, I'll give him crap all day long, and vice versa.
As he deserves.
Yes. Yeah. Joe hates great things.
I hate Joe because every time he's on the show, it's because I'm not. So
right. Yeah. Exactly.
Doesn't he have strong opinions about Nickelback? I'm pretty sure he does.
Oh, he loves them. loves to hate them. Yeah, no, like that first, this is so pathetic, but I'm gonna humble brag for a second. And every one of the concepts I have come up with, I just can't draw worth a spit. But I've loved it because they've all been really fun. Like the first one was us hanging upside down from the lair. Then the second one is us down from the lair, but I'm holding a microphone trying to ignite it like a lightsaber, and Jason's giving me like a WTF look.
Like a side eye, like, what are you doing? And I've got my lightsaber ignited, and the Wampa's coming closer to us. I've got the Facebook pictures up right now, so I'm looking at it if you need any help.
Yeah, well, and I'm trying to
you
remember.
should post them to Twitter, definitely, like a retrospective.
We should do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that I know we used for a very short time and we've never reused is the one of us sitting with the Wampa in the Millennium Falcon hold, sitting at the Jarrett table. We had that. That's actually my PlayStation background. So whenever I turn on my PlayStation, that's my background, and I love it.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, we had that up for a very short period, and that was meant to be kind of just a fun one. We're very wary.
Then there's one of us where he puts us in costume for the first time.
Yes, which was great.
Where I'm wearing my Jedi robes with my lightsaber cutting through an ice wall.
I love that.
Carl's in the Han Bespin outfit, blasting away at the Wampa while he's lumbering towards us.
That's my favorite one, and obviously, like that one we've used for a long time now.
Yeah. And then we did. You're right. The Dejarik one where we're all sitting around playing Dejarik, and the Wampa is squeezed between us with his knees up to his chest.
Yeah. That one's fun.
And then there's the one where Carl and I are dueling.
Yes.
We both got lightsabers. Their lightsabers are crossed, and then in the background there's the silhouette of the Wampa chasing Jar Jar.
Yeah. Which is great. Yeah.
So. And then
he did one for our 4-year anniversary where the Wampa's holding a cake.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that might have been the last one he did.
No, then there's the profile picture we got on our Facebook, which is us posing with the Wampa.
Right.
He's got
he's on our team.
The Wampa.
Yeah.
In an action pose, and I'm with my lightsaber ignited, and Carl's got the Han Solo blaster pointed at the camera, and we're all ready for action.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So
the Wampa's got 2 arms. I noticed.
Yeah. Oh, it's not Luke's Wampa.
You still haven't got him.
Yeah. No. But now he's our friend, and it's great.
Right. He hasn't gotten us yet either.
Yeah.
So that's the good thing. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we've had a lot of fun with the art, and Joe has always been just so amazing because Carl's right. Carl comes up with these ideas, and sometimes I throw in my 2 cents worth, but Carl's like, I've got this idea for a print. What do you think? And I'm like, that's amazing. And then Joe just kind of brings it to life in a way that we never imagined it could. So
yeah.
And so Joe's great. His art style really kind of put us on the map in a way, because that was one of those things that we really, once we got the original prints from Joe, we really pushed that as part of our social media presence on iTunes and everything. That was something that we really pushed out there, and I'm pretty sure we've had people who said that scrolling through Star Wars podcasts and iTunes, they clicked on ours because they liked the artwork. So
I would believe that. Yeah,
we've gotten listeners because of Joe's artwork. So Joe, you're partially at fault for this episode.
Yeah. Well, and we do need to have a new one soon to celebrate 7 years and to celebrate the fact that it's not just us in the lair anymore.
Yeah.
What? Who said that? What?
Who said that? What was that voice? That
I think it was Chad Kroger from Nickelback. But one thing I did want to say in regards to that stuff is because now we've been able to make T-shirts now because of what Joe's made, and Joe's made like really good logos that work well on T-shirts. The prints, they're cool, but they're not made for T-shirts in a way. And like everyone we've ever made has looked a little bit geeky in that sense, which is fine. But I love the logo ones that Joe gave to us because it's very Star Wars, it's a very Star Wars logo. And again, I thought it was so cool to have it. I was like, oh, but Jason I was like, Joe, do the silhouette of us hanging though, because it's like it'll be fun at the bottom. He's like, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. And then instead of the apostrophe S for Wampas, I was like, use the Rebel logo symbol there. And he's like, yeah, that's cool. And so I know like when we started this show, I've always wanted to be part of something. I played sports, but only through like junior year of high school, so I never really got a Letterman jacket. Like I never got to be part of something branded, if that makes sense. And I've always wanted to be part of something like I got really into the show Sons of Anarchy years ago, you know, the show about the motorcycle gang, and I used to like buy all these t-shirts that they would wear in the show because I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm part of that club.
Yeah.
I love have you either of you ever seen the show Rescue Me with it's about firefighters in
the
New York City.
firefighters.
Yeah. With
No, I haven't.
okay, it's a really good show. It's been off the air for a number of years, but it's really good. But I always loved how they were always just wearing like T-shirts that like had their firehouse logo on it or like their house and truck number. I was like, oh, it's cool because like it's like you belong to that, right? Part of my fascination with like when I was thinking of becoming a priest is like I can't wait to just wear like priest clothes all the time. I'll never get a girlfriend, which is like, yes, you're right, you can't.
It's actually
Hence why I decided not to go that route. But you know, I'm sorry, this is a kind of a long story to get to a very simple point, but I loved when we finally started making clothes because I have a lot of like Wampusler shirts now, and I wear them pretty regularly, and I just feel like I finally belong to something that I want to belong to, right? Everything else was always a little bit forced in some ways, but this is the one thing I've always been passionate about in my life, and I love that, you know, we've been able to create this show that also has created a community, and I do feel like I belong to something, and I don't know, I kind of empowered might be too strong a word, but I just feel cool when I wear a Wampusler thing. I love that I have like a Wampusler, you know, magnet on my fridge. I love that the students at the school I work at have tons of Wampusler magnets on their fridges because I bring them to work. Like, I love when I'm walking down the hall and I see a Wampusler business card like on a random desk. And I'm like, oh, well, that student clearly didn't want it, but whatever. Now it's on the campus. But I don't know. I just like it. It feels really cool that we've created something that I'm part of.
Yeah.
And just to as a complete sidebar on this, very often when I'm wearing my Wampusler shirts out in public, people say, "Nice shirt. I like that shirt." You know, it's nothing they've ever seen before, and I get comments. I seriously get more comments about my Wampusler shirts than I do about any other Star Wars shirt I wear. So,
Cool.
Well,
yeah.
And I think I've probably told both these stories now on air because I was so excited after they happened. But when I went down to New York City I went down the summer that Spider-Man Homecoming came out to go with Joe Hogan and the group of guys down there, and I had a Wampusler shirt on, but it's the Wampusler logo, but it's an Aurebesh. And this guy comes up to me, he's like, "Oh man, my Aurebesh isn't very good," but he's like, "What does that say?" I was like, "Oh, Wampusler." He goes, "Oh, dude, that's a great podcast. Do you listen?" I'm like, "I'm Carl. I'm one of the hosts." He's like, "That's amazing." He's like, "I didn't know you lived in New York." And I was like, "I don't. I'm just visiting." And it was just so cool. And then when I went to my first Star Wars trivia out here in Boston just a few months ago, I wore my Han Solo jacket, but I had a Wampusler shirt on under it. And then we had to do a tiebreaker, and it was me against this guy. I know him. His name's Mike, and he's a listener on the show. But I had taken the jacket off because I was sweating. I was ready to go. And I shook his hand, and we introduced ourselves. He goes, "Oh, Wampusler, that's a great show. Do you listen?" I go, "Yeah, I'm Carl. I'm one of the hosts." He's like, "Dude, I love your show." And I'm like, "This is wild." And like, I just felt so cool. So Mike, if you're listening, thank you for that.
Oh man, that is amazing! You're making me want to wear a Wampusler T-shirt at Celebration. I definitely will.
Well, we're definitely going to have to get you one for Celebration. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It was just, it was great. And I remember the last trivia I was at just a couple weeks ago with my friend Ben. I was wearing a Wampusler shirt there, and I remember there was this one table where this really cute girl was sitting, and I kept saying to Ben, I'm like, I feel really cool here because like this is my crowd and like we're totally crushing this right now. Should I go like say hi to her? And he's like, "Carl, I think she just works for the bar and she's just taking pictures for their event page." And I'm like, "Oh." And like all the wind just went out of my sails. It's like, okay, never mind.
Way to go, Ben. You crushed his hopes and dreams.
Ben keeps me real. So
you need a little bit of that sometimes, Carl.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
Tumbleweedies. But yeah. Anyway, I'm done talking.
there's actually two stories that I'm pretty sure I've heard before, but I definitely want to hear again. And I think that was a really good time to talk about them. I want to hear how you guys first met and where you were. Everyone remembers the day that Disney bought Star Wars and you learned you were going to get more Star Wars. I want to hear about both of these things, please. I'm super excited, and now's the time to get nostalgic. So, all
right, yeah. Carl, I think you should tell the story about how we met, and I'll tell the story about Disney because I'm kind of at fault about the Disney story.
Okay, I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I mean, or we could just tell them together. I mean, that's
no. I mean, it is what. If I miss anything, fill me in. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've told the story several times over the years, but if you're a newer listener, also if you're a new listener, hopefully you're still listening. You're like, I kind of tuned in to like hear something about Star Wars, not about your show. But if that's the case, I apologize.
They clicked on the episode titled "Blue Milk Boys." I mean, they kind of knew, I think. Yeah,
hopefully. But no, it was so we went out to, both of us were going out to fan days, and I was fortunate enough that it was a few months after I had been on my first ever podcast. Chris Smith invited me onto Sarlacc Pit, and after we finished recording, he and Matt invited me to go to fan days, and I was like, I don't know. And Chris was like, I've got a free extra VIP ticket, like I've got an extra bed in my room, like you can come and stay. He's like, all you have to pay for, he's like, all you got to pay for is your flight. And I was like, you know what? I'm an adult now. I have a job. I can save the money. I'm doing this. Yeah, I've always wanted to go to one of these things. So I went out, and the very next morning, I met Jason. He just rolled up in his car that was like the Millennium Falcon because it was literally a hunk of junk.
Yes.
And I say that with love, Jason.
She's got it where it counts.
She did have it where it counts.
No,
you had to hold the felt on the ceiling up.
She blew 2 tires on the drive to fan days.
Yeah. You had to hold the roof up, or not the roof, but like the fabric on the roof of the car, like on the inside, it was falling down. So you had to hold that up in the passenger seat. Yeah. I remember that.
If I'd been there, I would have been like, you came in that thing? You're braver than I thought.
Yeah. No, seriously though, I was supposed to go with a friend. I had a friend who was going to go, but for work thing, he had to bail at the last minute, and he was really upset about it. But I was going to go anyways. This is the first time I'd ever done something like this, and now I'm going by myself. I knew Matt, who was one of the hosts of the Sarlacc Pit. I talked with him a couple times because I was really involved with Matt and Mike's show Frontlines, the Clone Wars podcast. And so I was familiar with Chris through that, the Sarlacc Pit guys. And I was going ostensibly to help, cover it for Frontlines. I got a media pass through Frontlines, so I didn't have to pay to get in, so that was nice. And I was staying with a friend who lived, 30 minutes away from the convention center, so I was going to go up there, get there early, hang out with them, and literally blew 2 tires on the highway getting up there the day before. And I was like, this is not going well. This is nothing.
So I because when I drove back to the L.A. from Anaheim with Matt Cranky of Sarlacc Pit, because he was giving me a ride back to the airport at the end of Anaheim celebration, we blew a tire on the highway on the way to L.A. So,
oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Why are they lining the tires with tacks? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. I don't know.
They need to rethink that.
Yeah. Thankfully, there was a tire. What was it? I forget the discount tire like a mile down the road. So I was able to get over there and replace my tires. But so that was $80 out the window. I was not expecting. Even before I got to the convention, I was like, this sucks. But I got there, the morning of the convention, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been to one of these things. And so I found, Matt and Chris and their posse. I was like, okay, I'm going to hang out, see what's going on. But they were busy because this was one of the big days. They were going to be hitting up all the interviews and stuff for their show. And so they had a whole lineup of things that they had to do that morning. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so Carl and I are just kind of awkwardly standing off to the side while they're interviewing Steven Stanton or somebody. And we started talking. Carl actually started talking to me. I was
Aw.
very, very shy and quiet at the time, and I didn't say a lot.
You didn't break out the Jar Jar impressions like out the gate. You're just
Not out the gate.
I know, boy.
I liked it because I am
later.
a talker, and I initially was taken by it. I'm like, oh great, I can just keep talking to this guy. He's not going to say much. This is perfect, and he's really nice.
But of course, it got to be lunchtime, and we're like, how are we going to go eat? And I was like, Whataburger's my favorite.
And I've never been to one because they don't have any on the East Coast.
Yeah, Whataburger's legit. Let's be real.
So we piled into Jason's car, held his felt ceiling up. And it was the two of us, obviously. Brad Mitchell, who we met out there as well, great guy. I don't know. I hope he still listens to the show. And J.C. Cox, who was in his. He'd created like his own Jedi character, so he's in a cosplay costume. We're sitting there at Whataburger eating burgers and fries. I'm sitting next to a dude who's dressed like a Jedi. I'm sitting across from a dude who is obsessed with Star Wars. Then Brad's there who also loves Star Wars. And it was a dream come true. Like it really was, because my Star Wars fandom was huge like when I was a kid, my cousins got me into it. I loved it. But they never necessarily grew out of it, but we grew out of we all grew apart as we grew up. Not in a bad way, just kind of grew apart.
You grow up. It happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still kind of clung to part of a certain part of the Star Wars fandom that they no longer clung to.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really have anybody to share that with for a long time. I mean, really from pretty much, like 10th grade until really fan days. I mean, when I was in college, I had friends that also enjoyed it, but it was never anything like this. So I'm sitting there next to a dude dressed like a Jedi, and the question that I would always ask people at fan days when I met them was, so what's your favorite Star Wars movie? Because it's a great conversation starter at a Star Wars convention.
And what's your favorite Star Wars character?
Yes. So we were going around the table. I'm pretty sure J.C. Cox said Empire. I want to say Brad said Return of the Jedi. I don't remember. I apologize, Brad.
I think it was Empire.
But Jason said Return of the Jedi, but my close second is Attack of the Clones, and my favorite character is R2-D2. And I'm like, who are you? You're amazing. Yeah, that's kind of how it went. And then Carl and I were pretty much inseparable the rest of the weekend. Yeah.
Oh.
We got back from lunch, and JC had to go find somebody. I think Brad just wandered off. But Carl and I just roamed the convention center for the rest of the weekend. Like, we hung out the rest of the time, and it had so much fun.
And to be fair, it wasn't even 24 hours, because Fan Days was only 2 days. So, like, I met you that first day, and we hung out a ton throughout the day. And then the second day, because I remember you helped me hunt down, I really wanted that Dagobah Star Tours poster.
Yeah.
And like I remember you were kind enough to say, like, I'll take it with me and mail it so it'd be cheaper. And I was like, okay, but he wanted a lot. But when I came home, I immediately so it's still two of my favorite things in my Star Wars collection in my Star Wars room is I have it's probably 12 inches long by like 6 inches tall. It's kind of like a widescreen type painting, and it's of Bespin, and I love it. I have that. It's literally the pinnacle of my Star Wars room still to this day. And I bought just a die-cast Millennium Falcon model that still sits on the front of my like TV table in my Star Wars room, and I just love it. Like these are two of my and that also, Carl. I have my favorite. Well, yeah, it's probably my favorite Star Wars painting. I also bought at Fan Days, and I remember it's painted by Jason Palmer. And it's called the Saga. Yep, and it's just like kind of a series of paintings from A New Hope through Return of the Jedi, and it's a beautiful painting. I remember
Phantom Menace.
Nope,
Jedi,
it's just the original.
Oh no, that's right. It is the OT. Never mind.
And I remember Matt Cranky bought one, and I was like, oh, I really want one. And I was hemming and hawing, and I went back to his table, and Jason Palmer's like, I can just, if you buy it online, I can mail it to you. I was like, oh great, this is awesome. And yeah, I mean that and my Cloud City painting are still they're like the pinnacle of my Star Wars room, because that's kind of what started all of this. And when Jason and I were just very fortunate. Like it's like anything in life. When you kind of meet someone who's going to be your best friend, like you just kind of click immediately. Same with like a relationship, right? Like even a romantic relationship, you usually know pretty early, like if this person's clicking with you or not. Mm-hmm. And same with a really good friendship. And really good friendships are hard to come by. Like I've got a lot of really good friends, but I don't have a ton of really great friends. And that's not meant to be mean to any of my friends, but like some people you just really click perfectly with. And Jason and I had that camaraderie right away. And when we were saying goodbye to each other, which was really sad, I was like we obviously exchanged numbers on our non-smartphones at the time. I know I had a flip phone back then. I don't know if you did. Probably.
I'm pretty sure I had a Razor.
Yeah, I didn't even have a Razor yet. I had like a really nasty old flip phone. I remember like we exchanged numbers. We didn't even really text because I don't even know if I had a texting plan then. And I remember calling, but we made the
numbers,
decision.
Facebook contact.
Yeah. And I remember we made the decision before we parted that we were going to make a podcast together. And Riley and Bethany were there of Star Wars Report, and they were still pretty new to it. But they were like, Riley's like, yeah, I'd definitely be happy to help you with the technical stuff. So 2 nights after I got home from Dallas, I remember just like sitting on my bed and we were just like chatting and laughing and like planning this podcast. It started brainstorming ideas about
the very next week.
Yeah. So it was great. I love that. It's a great story. So hopefully you don't mind hearing it.
And it's one of those, we are a rare pair in Star Wars podcasting that we met before we started podcasting together. There's so many people who met online first, and some people I know have never actually met each other in the flesh before, you know?
Yeah.
But they podcast and they're great friends, and that's awesome. But we're a rare breed where we got to meet first, and then start the podcast. So
yeah.
Now,
before we get into the Disney thing, I've thought of like a little sub question to this question. Jason, where were you when Carl said we're gonna have a guest on the show named Katie Horn? What were you? Do you remember that?
Well, I mean, it kind of came to with the Patreon thing, and so you were just like the first. As soon as we launched that tier, Katie was like, "Me,
yeah, I'll go. I volunteer as tribute."
right. And you were starting to get pretty active on the social media too. So we're like, oh, okay, this could be fun. And then Carl's like, yeah, she wants to talk about Maul, and I was like, oh, so she's like Teresa Delgado, I guess. She's the dark side. But yeah, that's kind of where I was. I was like, oh, we're going to talk about Maul. Okay, we've never done that before. This could be fun.
Nice,
hopefully.
Yeah. Well,
and it turned out to be one of the best episodes we've done. So
that's nice. Yeah, I remember talking through Patreon. I talked to Carl, and I didn't talk to you, Jason, until we actually sat down to record. I remember.
Yeah. No, I see those things retroactively because they come in on the email too. So I kind of
read. Gotcha. No, it's all good.
Yeah. But Carl's pretty good on the Patreon. So anyways, let's go to the
yeah, where were you? Oh my gosh, that day. Every Star Wars fans remembers that day.
Well, that day I was a bad Star Wars fan because I had like turned off my phone. I was at school studying.
Oh my gosh.
I was at college studying, and this is one of those, I was in like about a 2-3 month phase where I was like, I'm going to work out and actually ride my bike to school. I was close enough I could ride my bike to school and not have to go and pay the parking or whatever.
That's good.
In my car. So it was
retroactively applaud you for that, honestly.
And it was cool enough, which is rare in Arizona, that I could actually accomplish that. And so I had studied at the library, and I was decided to ride my bike home. And I remember turning my phone back on right about the time I started to head out. And I'm sitting at a stoplight, and my phone is just buzzing like a, it's vibrating like somebody, I don't know. It would not stop. And I'm like, I'm literally about to fall off my bicycle because it's vibrating that much. I'm like, what is going on? Did somebody die?
Oh no.
I mean, and
then, like the Schrodinger's cat of Star Wars.
And finally, at one point, it wouldn't stop, and so finally, I pulled over and was like, "What's going on?" And I looked real quick at the first couple of texts I was getting, and it was like, "Disney bought Star Wars. Oh my gosh, we got to." And Carl's like, "We got to talk. Hey, are you there? Hey, we need to podcast about this." I think I had like 2 missed calls and a bunch of text messages from Carl
Oh,
wanting to
God.
get on and podcast about this. And so I waited to respond until after I got back to my apartment, and I was like, hey, should we just get on Skype? And he was like, yes. So I'm pretty sure that's how that went. But I just remember sitting at the stoplight waiting for it to turn green and my phone just blowing up. Carl,
Oh my gosh.
what was it like being on the other end of that?
Yeah, were you just like
Frustrating as
pacing
hell,
and like
and
you
your
got the
co-host
shakes
is not
and like,
responding. No, I'm just kidding. Well, Chris Smith was the one that told me. He texted me. I just gotten home from work, and he's like, Disney bought Star Wars. They're making episodes 7, 8, and 9. That was all the text said. I'm like, what? And I was like, are you serious?
What?
He goes, yes. What? 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 We just really want to make a podcast where we have Darth Vader's what, and Obi-Wan what, and then Anakin's what. There's so many good whats.
Leia's what?
Oh yeah, hers is probably the best. Yeah,
I know.
What?
You may file when ready. What?
Yeah.
The
Oh
thoughts
my
are
gosh.
interesting. Not doing this very much make an effective demonstration. Don't worry. We shall deal with your rebel friends soon enough.
No. And but yeah, so Chris texted me. I hop on the computer. It's everywhere. So
Yeah.
I immediately just start. I called Jason first. I think it probably went straight to voicemail since your phone was off.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I left you a voicemail. I sent you multiple texts, and I was just like, literally just running through my apartment, just like I don't, and because like I didn't know what to do with it. I was so damn excited, and I was like, I want to talk about this. And I had to wait hours until Jason finally responded, and we hopped on and did a show. Did we do that first? Because I know we had Matt and Chris on early on. I don't know if they were on the first one or maybe we did a second one with them too, because they joined us.
We did a second one with them
okay.
afterwards. If we did our first, the initial response to that was just the two of us.
Yeah.
And we got it out that day.
Right.
And
I think we were like one of
we
the
were
first. Yeah.
We were the first ones on the network to have a response
Right.
to the news out.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Which I think, and we were probably, even though Carl's like had to wait hours, it was probably like 2 hours before we actually sat
It's a
down.
long 2 hours, Jason.
I know,
right.
I'm sure, but
I think I put Empire on and I still couldn't stay focused.
We had a 40-minute podcast at the end of that, and which he uploaded immediately, and we probably were one of the first podcasts out there to have a response to it.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of the other big ones had responses, but we were within the top.
But I feel
group.
like I think we even got one out quicker than like RFR, and I don't know if Full of Sith existed then, but
They didn't.
okay. But yeah. Yeah. Where were you, Katie?
Oh my gosh, that day I was actually babysitting at the time, and and again I got text messages about it, and I remember just being all like, "There's more Star Wars," and the kids are like, "What?" And I'm like, "There's gonna be more Star Wars," and then I'm
She's like,
running
where's the
around.
kitchen? And she starts smashing plates.
Yeah, just start touching plates. Their mom comes back and just like there's cutlery everywhere.
You're
where are
like,
the children? They're fine.
You're like, I'll give you a
understand."
10% discount on my rate. Sorry.
Yeah, right? Oh my God. But that was the thing. I felt so lucky to be with children because I just was like screaming, like literally screaming and running around the backyard. I thought it was a fun game, but I'm just like, this is the only thing I can do right now to get this out of me. I'm just screaming. And the thing I kept like, the thing I like couldn't let go, like the thing that was in the forefront of my mind, it wasn't even like we're gonna get new movies. Like, of course I was excited about that, but the thing that like had me in its grip was Leia's a Disney princess now. And I'm just like screaming, Leia's a Disney princess, Leia's a Disney princess. So that's where I was. I was just running laps in some random lady's backyard.
That's amazing.
I think that might be the best story we've got about the Disney thing. Podcast.
I don't know. Like, it was just, it was impossible to contain the excitement that day as a Star Wars fan, and I'm sure all of you like can sympathize with that.
Yeah.
But you know what? We've been going for quite a while, so I think it's time we start wrapping up. And I know there were other comments on Facebook, and I apologize. We're not get what. Go ahead. What?
Yeah, we got all the Facebook ones. We just got a couple of emails left over. But
Oh, okay. Well, the emails were a little long, so we'll just say thank you, Sartosh, for your really kind words. Sartosh was on not that long ago. He did the episode with us about the future of the Jedi, and it was a lot of fun. He wrote us a very, very, very kind email, and of course, Patrick wrote us a really great email as well. So thank you both for those. But
thank you very much.
Yeah, just again for the sake of time, and we should probably start wrapping this up. But I mean, it's just wild, like 300 episodes of a Star Wars podcast, and a lot of folks were very kind in their messages saying, "Here's to 300 more." Well, you know what? I can't wait for the day in a few years when we're like episode 600.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Wow! Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I love talking Star Wars with both of you. It's so much fun. And
yeah,
agreed.
There's no
agreed.
There's no end date in sight. There is no end date.
No.
So, yeah. I don't know. Any closing thoughts from either of you?
I just feel so lucky, honestly, that there is more new Star Wars and that there are so many people that want to keep the conversation going. I just feel so lucky, so blessed.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. No, it's been such a wild ride. And it's been one of those things over the course of these almost 7 years now. One thing that's always been there is the Wampus Lair. I've moved states. I went through, my undergraduate degree, got my undergraduate, first full-time job, and, then now moving on to trying to, do other things. But the one thing that's always been there through all of this, tumultuous and good times alike, is been the Wampus Lair and Carl at the other end of the Skype machine. And we've had, been able to talk Star Wars, and that's been one of those things that's been there through it all. And it's crazy to think that, I can look back and say, man, almost 7 years ago we started the Wampus Lair, and I've been through a lot since then, and Carl's kind of been there through it all. It's such a weird thing, but it's such an awesome thing, and I'm so glad we get to keep doing this, Carl. And Katie, I'm so glad you joined us. It's so much fun, and I just am so excited. There's always more to talk about Star Wars with right now, because it means we get to keep having fun. We keep fooling everybody to come back week after week. So, it's like, seriously, this podcast is as much as I love doing it for everybody else and getting conversations going and interacting with everybody else. This podcast is as much a selfish, guilty pleasure for me as it is that others, the altruistic side of it. So I'm going to be completely honest. There are some days where I'm just like, it's been a rough day. I need to talk Star Wars with Carl. I don't care if this episode actually gets out. It does. But, I just need to talk Star Wars with Carl. So I've had those days. And I know, Carl, you've had those as well.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'm so happy that we kind of randomly discovered each other all those years ago and decided to start this goofy little podcast.
Yeah, and I'm so glad Katie gave us $20 so that she could, eventually be on the show. So, I'll be crass. Thanks, Katie.
Bribery will get you everywhere, folks.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, all I can do is second that, Jason. It's crazy. Like, it's so funny because this past month I was in Boston. This is my 10th year in Boston now, which is crazy. I've been here almost a third of my life, and the majority of my time in Boston has been with you. And I've been through a couple of career changes. I've been through lots of relationships, and which has affected the show in some ways. A lot of my anger around Last Jedi wasn't just the movie. It was a lot of going on in my personal life. And I'm with you. Like, this has been a consistent thing. And I actually did the math where we are averaging right now 47 episodes a year. So almost one a week. And like when we did start, we told ourselves we would do like every other week, maybe every week. It was much more, it was a little bit more relaxed schedule wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for the
And I
last
know
couple
we took like, a couple of months off here or there, like a month off here or there, early on too, like for summer. I think we almost took we did like one episode a month for the summer.
Yeah.
Last year, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
I think last year you guys took a month off because you were busy or something like that.
I took a month off because I was heartbroken, to be honest. So I just I needed time. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I thought I was helping.
No, it's. I mean, that's really why it was. Like, I was just so upset with the world. Even and it was the first time I was ever like disappointed by Star Wars. Like even Star Wars wasn't making me happy, and I just needed some time away because I knew I wasn't going to bring anything to the show because that's not, we're not about being negative, and it's not that I wanted to be negative, but it's like I'm not happy right now. I just need some time away from even this.
That's fair. Yeah.
And but I mean, what I've loved is like every week I get to talk Star Wars with one of my best friends, and now with you, Katie, who now becoming one of my best friends, and
Yes.
It's just such a blessing to be able to do this. And
Yeah.
I love that people listen. I love that we have a community. But I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I'm with you, Jason. Like there is definitely like, I love doing this just for me and like just for the friendship of this. And I love that others love listening to that.
Yeah.
And I've loved that I've had the two of you that have continually helped me unpack Star Wars and appreciate it even more. I mean, I think that's the biggest pull away I have from being able to do so many Star Wars episodes on a podcast is I didn't think it was possible to love and appreciate Star Wars more than I do now. Because I have the ability to challenge myself to think deeper about it, and to engage it in a very exciting way. And I have two great co-hosts now who help me just unpack it and think about things in totally new ways. I mean, you blew my mind last week, Katie, with the Heroine's Journey stuff, and it was awesome.
Thanks.
So it's been so much fun. But yeah, and and I was saying this, like the three of us were talking about this before we started recording tonight, that like we've been doing this for so long that we're going to start going back and kind of revisiting some early episodes because one, you can't access them in iTunes anymore. You can still access them in StarWarsReport.com. I think just
But you got to go back like
it takes
tens and tens of pages.
Well, to be fair, you could just do in Google like Wampa's Lair episode 1 and it should come right up. But again, like it's not as easy that they're not all right there in iTunes, and I don't know why they can't be, but they can't. They can only save so many. In the feed. But some of my favorite topics were some of the first 10 we did. Like I loved it. So we're going to start revisiting some stuff from earlier, but rather than doing top 5s, we're going to do top 10s. We're going to and like we've got new movies now. We've got our perspective on Star Wars fandom has certainly changed in the years. And we've got Katie, so a totally completely new voice in these particular things. So next week we're going to be doing our first episode in a top 10 series, but you're gonna have to come back next week to find out what the topic is. It's a kind of new and kind of old topic. So it's sort of been done, but not exactly, and it's certainly not been done as a top 10. So I am very excited.
And when we say top 10, folks, we're not going to do all 10 in an episode because we're not going to make you sit through 4 hours of us just blathering about stuff. No, we'll break it up. We'll hit 10 through 6 next week, and then 5 through 1 the following week. No honorable mentions in the top 10, though.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to survive.
Yeah, I know. I know. It'll be tough. But also, starting next week, like I said, we will go back and at the end of that episode, we'll tack on episode 1 of the A New Hope radio drama. So for those of you who are, wanting to hear those again, you tune in. They'll be back.
Yeah,
they're coming back.
They're coming back. And for those of you who have never heard them before, you're in for a treat, especially the A New Hope one. Especially the A New Hope one. So,
yeah. So, because of the fact that I did not think about either a matchup or a poll for next episode, we're not going to have one. So next week we'll also introduce a new either matchup or poll. I am ecstatic that Solo comes out Friday. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I am
For
gonna be-
digital.
Yes.
I'm still waiting on the physical copy. I'm not going to get the digital.
Oh my God!
I'm doing
just
both.
Crawling.
Yeah.
Crawling through the desert, awaiting the rain that is Solo.
Yes. I can't wait.
Bring it.
And I'm off on Friday, which is perfect. That's my first weekend day, so I will watch that movie at least twice on Friday, and I cannot wait.
You watch it for 24 hours. Like,
Just keep
wake
it on
up
a
with
loop.
Solo, go to
Yeah.
bed. Solo.
I just got the novel in the mail today too, so I was debating about waiting till after watching the movie one more time to start the novel, but I don't think I can. It's just going to stare
stop.
at me, and I'm not reading anything else right now before bed, so I was like, I have to start it tonight.
There you go.
Yep.
Do it.
Do it. But anyway, that's going to wrap this episode up. And if you're still with us, it's probably because of two reasons. One, you've been a longtime listener and you are part of this community, and we thank you for that. Or maybe you are a newer person and you did enjoy this trip down memory lane, and for that we thank you for being with us on that journey and revisiting that. And even though there was no hard-hitting Star Wars content on this episode, it is worth saying that, like, this show exists in its splendor because of you who listen. You participate in the polls, you participate in the matchups, you interact on social media. You make this show better. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there have been many an episode topic that's been inspired by something someone has said in a comment or in an email or something like that. So keep up the interactions, folks. You might hear some of your ideas talked about down the road. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Katie, for being here for episode 300. Oh, my gosh! 300 episodes. This is the Wampus Lair.
This is amazing. Yeah.
Do it.
Ugh, it's so good. It's been so good, and God, I don't know what else to say except I'm so ecstatic that we've had 300 of these episodes.
I know. And here's something you can say, Carl, if people want to weigh in on anything that they want to talk about with us, if there's more stuff on the 300th episode, things that they heard that they'd never heard before, or any other topic in Star Wars, where can people get in touch with us, Carl?
Well, of course, on Twitter. So follow us at Wampus Lair. We're on Facebook at Wampus Lair Podcast. You can email us at wampuslairpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, we got lots of great bonus content. I've been doing I know this is super cocky to say, but I've been having so much fun, and I think they're going really well with my solo soundtrack breakdowns on Patreon. So head over to patreon.com/Wampus Lair Podcast for all that expanded content.
And for Patreon supporters, there's a brand new Wampus Lair background spotlight episode I got up there for you, so check that out. Katie, if people want to interact with you, where can they do that?
You guys can find me on Twitter at PoHotDamarin. Absolutely, come hit me up on there. I love talking about Star Wars with you guys, and it's always a good time.
Got anything else, folks?
No, it's been a good 300 episodes.
300 more! Woo!
Woo! Well, thank you everyone so much for walking down memory lane with us. This has been episode 300 of the Wampus Lair Podcast, Blue Milk Boys, because that's what we almost were. For Carl and Katie, I'm Jason. We'll see you next time in 301 here in the Wampus Lair.